Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the September 7th, 2022 Special Civil Service Commission meeting. Can we please have a roll call?
Commissioner Abkarian,
Here.
Commissioner Astorian,
Here.
Commissioner McCarley,
Present.
Commissioner Gazarian,
Here.
and Chair Haratunian.
Here. Before I move on, Ms. Navarro, I'd like to welcome you as our new HR analyst for our commission, for the Civil Service Commission. We welcome you. I know you're not a stranger. You've been with the department. You've helped us over the years. But we welcome you in your new position, and we will look forward to working with you. Okay?
Thank you, Chair.
And one more important item before we get to the minutes. I'd like to wish a happy birthday to our Miss Lucy Varpetian and thank her for all the great work she does. And we wish her best of health and prosperity and many, many more years, including part of this commission and your service with us.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
With that, what's next, Ms. Navarro?
Minutes for the meeting of July 13, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Chair Gazarian, Commissioner Gazarian,
I will abstain, I was not present.
Commissioner Abkarian,
Yes.
Commissioner Astorian,
Yes.
Commissioner McCarley,
Yes.
and Chair Haratunian.
Yes.
So minutes for the meeting of August 24, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
Was I here?
It says you were.
Yes.
Yes, you
Indicates.
Was I here?
Yes.
Says you
All
were.
of us.
Yeah. No objections?
Physically, at least.
No objections to approve?
Moved by consensus.
Next item, please.
Oral communications.
Do we have any?
None.
None? Okay. Next item, please.
Recruitment and examination report.
Okay. Ms. Davies?
Mr. Chair and members of the commission, this is a regular recruitment and examination status report, which represents the current recruitments and process that our team is currently working on. You'll see that staff is currently working on 83 different recruitments that are in various stages, and this report reflects those various stages. If the commission has any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them. Otherwise, this is a note and file item.
Any questions? Hearing none?
Eligible
please.
list established.
Ms. Davies?
Mr. Chair and members of the commission, the subject before the commission is the regular report that includes all of the eligible lists that were recently established since our last meeting. This report includes the total number of applications and the number of individuals advanced through various stages of our examination processes for said positions. Since our last meeting, you'll see that we have several lists that were established, both open, promotional, and open and promotional. This is a note and file item. However, if the commission has any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
Any questions? Hearing none? Next item, please.
Class specification for approval, Workforce Development Management Series.
Ms. Davies?
Mr. Chair and members of the commission, the subject before the commission is the newly established Workforce Development Management Series. This series was established around the existing Workforce Development Administrator classification and has been modified to include the classifications of Workforce Development Manager and Workforce Development Supervisor. This series is being brought forth as part of the effort to restructure the city's Workforce Development Division, which is a division in the Community Services and Parks Department. The Community Services and Parks Department is proposing to create 2 new leadership positions that will report under the Workforce Development Administrator to fulfill essential and increasing supervisory responsibilities and create improved succession planning for the division. These are management-level positions, and as such, the Glendale Management Association has been given an opportunity to review the proposed changes to the series and did not express any concerns at the time of the agenda's posting. Our Director of Community Services and Parks, Onig Bolonian, as well as Enaid Navarro from our staff, they're both here and available to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Any questions?
Mr. Chair, I do have a question for our attorney. Ms. Varpedian, I serve on the board of directors for the Verdugo Workforce Development. Would that automatically take me out of voting on this?
Commissioner Astorian, no, it would not. There's no direct conflict to, there's no financial benefit that you get from that. There's no direct conflict to serving on both. So you wouldn't have to, unless you feel like there's some reason, the perception of conflict, then you may choose to abstain, but legally you wouldn't need to.
Thank you.
Commissioner McCarley.
If we could have the proponent, Babylon, come forward, I want to ask a couple of questions concerning structure.
Sure.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, President Hartooni and members of the commission. Onig Bolonian, Director of Community Services and Parks.
Perhaps these questions relate to ignorance that should have been rectified a long time ago, but as I see workforce development within your community service department, there are 3 sub-agencies which are the proponency and the execution agents for the delivery of services specifically for encouraging employment, stimulating employment, assisting those in development of skills to be employed. And those agencies would be the Glendale Youth Alliance, the Verdugo Job Center, and the WDB administration. First question, are those 3 entities, or any of them, are they city agencies?
The Glendale Youth Alliance is a nonprofit organization supported by the city. There are city employees that run all the programs. The Verdugo Job Center, we have the Workforce Development Administrator. She oversees all 3 sections, and the Verdugo Job Center located in South Central, on Central and Los Feliz. Those are city programs. It's a facility that we rent out with EDD, the Employee Development Department, State of California, and we provide career services and employment services.
So there's some integrated relationship between GDD and
Verdugo Job
the
Center.
Verdugo Job Center,
And
but
then-
that is part of the city.
Yes.
So there's no differentiation. However, with Glendale Youth Alliance, we're dealing with a board of directors for Glendale Youth Alliance, which itself has its own fundraising activities. It just so happens that the city has made a decision to assign a certain number of very senior employees to assist in the development of job skills among people under 18.
Yes, GYA serves youth 14 to 24,
24.
depending on the program.
Stand corrected.
Yes.
And then the final one, which I have no real understanding of at all, is WDB Administration.
That's the Workforce Development Board Administration. That's the board that oversees and makes the decisions for the Verdugo Job Center and the Glendale Youth Alliance, mainly the Verdugo Job Center, with all the funding coming in through Workforce Investment Opportunity Act, the state of California, and different agencies. They allocate the funds, make recommendations to City Council. So that's the board that oversees the Verdugo Job Center.
Similar to our commission, meaning it is, their representatives selected by city council members to serve on that particular board.
The board is selected by individual board members. They're
Board
not
is selected
appointed,
by board members?
yes, they're not appointed by the City Council.
Okay, so it's a successive series, one board member falls off, and the board moves forward and selects
a
somebody else to serve in that particular capacity. So does it have control or management control? Because you certainly indicated it has budget, if I heard correctly, it makes budget decisions,
They make budget recommendations to City Council.
recommendations. But it's
Recommendations.
not authoritative.
No,
But you have assigned to that board, consisting of 5 people,
yes, we have
members of the Glendale community or beyond Glendale?
the five
Because
people.
Verdugo is a very expansive phrase.
The 5 people, are you talking about the staffing?
Yeah, no, the
these are all
staffing is
ci-
quite clear. Staffing is Glendale. They get a paycheck from the city of Glendale. It's WDB.
Yeah. Our board, I believe, is a board of 18 board members. How many board members? 18? Up to 18 board members. And the members are members that have experience with the workforce sector, government sector, unions, filming, different trades, and they're members in the community. And the Workforce Development Board not only caters to Glendale residents,
That's what I
also
wanted.
Burbank,
Burbank,
Workforce Connection,
the
and La
Hills.
Cañada.
The Hills, La Cañada, so it's a
Yes.
bit broader.
It's broader.
So I would assume that you've got state funds intermixed with city funds,
All the-
which are then allocated among the action agencies, which are the Glendale Youth Alliance and the Verdugo Job Center.
Yes, most of our funding is through the federal government, the WIO, Workforce Investment Opportunity Act, as well as state. We also have some Measure S funds that City Council allocated last year for the Life Wrap program, which is the low-income rental assistance program for youth and their families.
And so certainly it's a bit beyond Glendale itself. But final question is, what is the real reason, forget that term, what is the reason for this, the generation of a new job specification when what we had previously appeared to be working, at least from my perspective?
The previous position that we had was the Senior Community Development Supervisor.
Yes.
And this was a position when Verdugo Job Center was under the Community Development Department back in 2009, 2010,
With Mr. Lanza fame.
with Miss Madeline Blake.
Ah,
So when
okay.
she had retired, that department had split, and some of the sections went to various departments. So the Community Services and Parks Department inherited the Community Development Block Grant Program, as well as the Verdugo Job Center. And as part of the Verdugo Job Center, we had a number of community development supervisors and senior community development supervisors. Well, the classification didn't work with the actual job duties and titles, the tasks that we currently have today. So workforce development supervisor and manager would fit the series under workforce development administrator.
I really appreciate that. It was explicit and succinct, helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I just have a quick question. It says may have the opportunity to participate in related division cross-training efforts. They're encouraged. Then it says experience and qualifications gained in this cross-training may apply towards promotional opportunities and transfers, and that's crossed out. Why is that? If you are encouraging the opportunity to participate in related divisional cross-training efforts, why would experience and qualification in that cross-training be crossed out for promotional opportunities or transfers? If you're gonna cross it out, cross out both, but if you're gonna keep one, you should keep the other. It's on page 1 of 5 and page 13. So it's on the first page, probably,
Part of the job classification?
yeah, it just says essential functions, and if you go from the bottom, 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, it says may have the opportunity to participate in related division cross-training efforts. And then you cross out experience and qualification gained in this cross-training may apply towards promotional opportunities and transfer, that's crossed out. So if they're encouraged to do divisional cross-training efforts, why wouldn't the experience gained during those cross-training be able to be used for promotional opportunities and transfers? Why would that be crossed out? Have you found it yet or not yet?
No, I'm
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Here, why don't I give you this? Come down, I'm gonna show it to you.
Oh.
You got it? If they're encouraged to participate in participate in related division cross-training efforts, I'm assuming that the next that followed was put there just to encourage people to do that.
Yeah, that
Why
would be
would
an
you take that
encouragement. That would
out?
be that's an error on our part.
Okay, so that would be put back the way it was
Yes.
before. Okay,
We always encourage training and upward mobility.
of course.
That's how we
And
all.
and it
that's
makes
how
sense.
We all
I
started.
just didn't
so-
understand why they took it out. Okay.
Good
Thank you.
point. Any other questions, comments?
Second with the changes, with the change.
Roll call, please.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Commissioner Kazarian?
Yes.
Commissioner Karian?
Yes.
Commissioner Astorian?
Yes.
Commissioner McCarley?
Yes.
And Chair Hartunian.
Yes. Next item, please.
Class specification for approval, Police Communications Administrator.
Ms. Adams?
Mr. Chair and members of the commission, the subject before the commission is a revision to the class specification for Police Communications Administrator in the Glendale Police Department. The Police Communications Administrator class specification was last updated in 1992, and since then, the field of police communications has gone through significant changes. These modifications before you aim to update the job duties and the minimum requirements. The police department is seeking to change the minimum requirements for this class from 3 years of supervisory experience in police communications to 5 years of supervisory management experience in a public safety agency with at least 3 years in a public safety 911 facility. In addition to changes to the minimum qualifications, the department is seeking to update the essential functions to reflect the new responsibilities for this position. This is a management level position, and as such, the Glendale Management Association has been given an opportunity to review the proposed changes and did not express any concerns at the time of the agenda's posting. Our Chief of Police, as well as Russ Kwan from our staff, are here and available to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Commissioner McCarley?
One comment, whomever is the proponency, is that the chief, or is it?
Proponency.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Chief, I do want to applaud your staff and as well our HR staff in moving forward and streamlining the minimum requirements. Of course, that's been an area of keen interest for me. That's the third paragraph in the background that was recited by Ms. Adams, in which you have modified the requirements for supervisorial background and experience to a 5-year progressive engagement at a supervisorial level in lieu of a hard stop 3 years of supervision at a communications facility. So I wanted to express that to you, as well to our HR department, and especially to our city manager. with that, this alignment is merely a restatement of the job requirements and the essential functions. There's a little bit of specificity in here in terms of e-communication. What was the necessity of making the modifications that we find here outside of the reduction in some of the minimum requirements?
Good evening, Chair Hartedian and Commissioner Carl Povolitis, Police Chief. Most of these things we're really updating. We have not updated this job specification since 1992. We have gone through several reorganizations within the department, and the most recent sort of iteration of this position was both a combination of overseeing, being the communications administrator and technology administrator. In the last few years, I've actually had a sworn manager overseeing communications. It is now time, and in the last budget, is now time to return it to being a professional staff position to give people the opportunity to do that. But we no longer need the technology aspects of that. That's been spun off to another section of the department. And so now we're taking something that happened in 1992. Obviously, that is 30 years ago. Things have changed in that time, and so this is just updating it to the current needs of the department.
And I would assume this is a civilian position.
That's correct. It's a professional. This is a professional staff position.
And however, there's one insertion, and that is that this particular supervisor may act for the division commander in his or her absence. And I would assume a division commander is at a captain level?
In this case, in parts of the department, it is a captain, but in this case, we also have a civilian division commander. If you've met Commander Cheryl Davis Moore, who oversees this, most of our professional staff functions fall under our civilian division commander. This is one of those that falls in here, so it would be a natural course that if Commander Moore is not present, that this would be one of the people that could act in her stead.
But not become an ad hoc division commander for operations on the street.
I mean, obviously, when we made the transition to having a civilian division commander, there's a certain level of common sense that goes into how we operate that. And while they work, they are a member of the police department's executive team, they work within their area of expertise. So no, I do not expect a professional staff member to be overseeing police operation, field operation matters. However, they have a lot to do with making sure that the backbone and nerve center of our operations work appropriately and efficiently.
Any other questions, comments? Commissioner Kazarian?
Good evening, Chief. Under education and training, I'm looking and seeing an Associate of Arts or Science degree with major coursework in public safety. That's 60 units, 60 college units. But then I'm seeing in red, and I don't know if the red has been removed or is that a insertion now? A new insertion, I suppose, because it's not been scratched off. A bachelor's or master's degree is preferred. My question is, well, not my question, my observation was a bachelor's or master's degree are hardly interchangeable. One is higher than the other, you know, and you have 3 degrees that are being referenced under education and training. You're saying we want you to have at least an AA degree, and a bachelor's or master's is desirable. So first, is an AA degree sufficient in terms of educational background, in your opinion? And if so, then the preferred bachelor's or master's degree, does that mean that if 2 people come at you and one has a bachelor's or the other one has a master's, the master's degree will probably carry the day because it's a higher degree, and therefore we assume it comes with greater knowledge in the field?
So, Commissioner Kazarian, I think an associate's degree is the minimum that you require. So it's really, in order to make this work, it's a combination of education and experience. And so someone who has a lot of experience, but maybe not a lot of formal education, could do very well in the position. Someone who has less experience may have more formal education, and if you have two equally weighted, if you have someone that has a broader understanding of the world and how things operate and how things integrate to each other, they become a stronger team member. So that in essence becomes an assessment for the testing and the process. So yes, absolute bare minimum as having the associate's degree. Obviously prefer a higher level of education if somebody has that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you, Chief. Roll call?
Commissioner Kazarian?
Yes.
Commissioner Abkarian?
Yes.
Commissioner Scorpion?
Yes.
Commissioner McCarley?
Yes.
And Chair Hartunian.
Yes. Next item, please.
Class specification for approval, Water Superintendent.
Ms. Adams, please.
Mr. Chair and members of the commission, the subject before the commission is a revision to the class specification for water superintendent, which was updated 19 years ago. The water superintendent is an upper management position responsible for managing the construction, operation, and maintenance of the municipal water system. The Glendale Water and Power Department is requesting to update the language that meets and aligns with the current industry standards and include the new water treatment and water distribution operator certification requirements, as well as the dam operator classification, that designation. Updating the experience requirement, as well as adding some of the language that is consistent with other specifications, is also important to Glendale Water and Power. This is a management level position, and as such, the Glendale Management Association has been given the opportunity to review the proposed changes and did not express any concerns at the time of the agenda's posting. Our Chief Assistant General Manager, Mike DeGhetto, as well as Russ Kwan from our staff are here and available to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Any questions?
Yeah,
Commissioner McCarley,
he could come forth.
can we call the proponency?
Thank you. Sir, good evening.
Hello.
I'm looking at the wire diagram. This would be page, I assume, page 31 in our materials.
32,
32? Stand corrected, 32. And I'm just trying to ascertain, this is a direct report. You have water distribution, and it's a direct report to the Chief Assistant City Manager, or General Manager. Is it General Manager of GWP?
Chair
So
Hartunian?
who's on the top? Whom would we look to if there was a failure in the distribution of water? If we had a water main that collapsed, just as our sister facility is suffering such a loss in its capabilities that has resulted in the degradation of water supplies to the county.
Chair Hartunian, members of the commission, Michael DeGhetto, Chief Assistant General Manager for Water, Commissioner McCarley, it would be me. I'm the Chief Assistant General Manager for Water, and then my boss is the General Manager of Glendale Water and Power.
All right, so this is on, as we
And
see.
these are my direct reports, if that answers your
So there are two lines, two hierarchical lines, water and power, and it is water for which you are responsible. And the water distribution, that's a title, and that title precedes the water superintendent, who is your person on the ground for field operations. So he supervises the installation, the construction, the installation, and the operation of all water distribution systems in this city. That's a huge responsibility.
Commissioner McCarley, there's actually two superintendents.
Okay?
And if you look on the back of that page, right, there's two org charts. So those two
Okay.
superintendents report to me, as well as the water quality manager, which, isn't part of this series, and the water.
Okay, now you're gonna
Water
have to help me.
administrator, yeah.
So at this particular point, we have water superintendent,
And there's two.
And there are two with distinct functions. So
And-
one is for water treatment and water operation, facilities maintenance, and the other is for equipment
So,
and system mechanical,
so it-
distribution system construction.
Let Mr. Ghetto.
Go ahead.
Commissioner McCarley, thanks. No, thanks for
Yeah.
pointing that out. So in those two org charts, right, those are two trees kind of in the water
Yeah,
division.
uh-huh.
And one is over water distribution and one is over water operation. And in the class specification, we split it out based on when assigned to distribution or when assigned to operations. And then each of those superintendents have different levels of certifications they need because the state looks, we have to have a chief distribution operator and a chief treatment operator. So I broke out the job spec to identify those two levels of certification.
So again, looking at this, we have one which is water and superintendent. And then, if I read this correctly, distribution system, construction distribution system maintenance. So this is all the underground piping, so the network that delivers water to my home and to businesses. That's the responsibility of this particular position and the occupant of this position.
Commissioner McCarley, that's correct. And when we talk about distribution, it's like you said, it's the pipes, it's the service lines, the fire hydrants, and all those sorts of things. And that is also the crew that will help when, say, we do maintenance on a reservoir, because that crew's the crew with the equipment and the trucks and things like that. Where I would say that the reservoir operation, the operation of the pump stations and the wells, and the treatment facility is under the superintendent that oversees operations. So there's two
Interesting
superintendents.
choice.
So we split it that work. Like, you
Interesting
started
choice
with,
of
that's a lot of responsibility. So it is split between two
I'm not
superintendents.
necessarily implying that my view of all things is even close to accurate, but you have the distribution, which is a water pipeline system, which is both construction and maintenance, which could be summarized as operations as well. That is an operations function. That is an operations function.
We actually split it in two different, we specifically call operations because we have the
Reclamation.
facility operators in that group. And the facility operators run the SCADA system, they watch the pump stations, they increase the purchase for Metropolitan, they oversee the treatment plant, and that's what we would consider operations. And distribution, we signify separately to parallel the way the state looks at it. So we have distribution and treatment.
All right, treatment's an interesting word. I think I understood your previous outline, meaning that these are the men and women who stand behind the big computer screens or the bank of toggle switches at the pump station and
Commissioner McCarley,
appropriately-
can you come close to the microphone?
appropriately control the water coming to our city.
Those are the operators.
Yeah, but they come under the treatment side of the house.
Yeah, that's correct, for the
It's
certification
choice of
level.
words.
Yes.
And your view, you've indicated that these two positions are mandated by the state,
The levels of certification for those two positions are mandated by the state,
meaning the levels are different.
and the levels are different, that's correct.
And no one person could have the certifications for which he or she could serve in both positions simultaneously.
The span of control would be too great.
Or at
For
least your
that, so
view of the
that's-
span of control would be too great.
That is my professional opinion, yes, and we need two superintendents. And there's one with the T5 and a D5 that oversees operations, and there's one with a D5, and I think it was a T3
Sir,
that
it's
oversees distribution.
Water Resources Board, cert?
It's the State Water Resources Control Board.
Yeah,
And they have an
control board
operator
cert.
certification program.
All right, I appreciate the outline. I think we have differences of opinion about span of control and the ability of one person to handle more functions, but that's my particular view of the world. But thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Delgado. Commissioner Kazarian?
Thank you, sir. Good evening. Under education and training, I see that the position requires a high school diploma or a GED, but the alternative, which used to be apparently possible, supplemented by college-level courses in civil engineering and hydraulics, has been removed. What's the logic behind that?
Commissioner Gazarian, that's a really good question, and I worked with the HR folks quite a bit on that. In order to have these certifications, you can't get them without taking specialized training courses, and there's a certain number of courses that you have to take for each level of certification, and I specifically took that language out, one, because it's implicit in being able to have those certifications, and two, because American Water Works Association offers those courses. So it's not a college, right? There are other, I guess, vendors or avenues that you can get that specialized training. So I was actually deliberate in taking that out.
So in terms of these courses that one would take that are required courses for continuing certifications, I think, as you refer to it,
That's correct.
one need to have a high school diploma to be able to take these courses? Is that what I'm understanding?
No, that's a good point. You don't, let me think. You're correct. You have to have a GED or a high school diploma even to take the level 1
I see.
exam. But to move on to the level 2 exam, you have to have a specialized training course, which doesn't necessarily need to be from a college or a university.
But you can't get to level 2 without getting level 1 first.
You can actually jump straight to level 2.
Oh, you can?
Because
Okay.
if you have your diploma and you take that specialized training course first, you can just jump straight to 2.
I see. All
But
right.
after that, you can't. And you actually have to have also experience being a level 2 operator for a year before you can be a level 3. So it's a very prescribed process from the state.
I understand your logic. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Move to approve.
Second.
Roll call?
Commissioner Gazarian?
Yes.
Commissioner Abkarian?
Yes.
Commissioner Astorian?
Yes.
Commissioner McCarley?
Yes.
And Chair Hartunian.
Yes. Next item, please.
Class specification for approval, Assistant to City Manager.
Ms. Adams?
Mr. Chair and members of the commission, the subject before the commission is a revision to the class specification for Assistant to City Manager. The Assistant to City Manager is a upper management position responsible for providing professional level support to the city manager, assistant city manager, and deputy city manager on complex and sensitive matters, as well as responding to the community on certain concerns, as well as managing special projects. This class specification was last updated approximately 30 years ago, and the city manager's office is requesting to update the existing specification, primarily to bring it up to date, but also to ensure that the requirements are consistent with industry standards. This includes updating the experience requirement as well as adding some other language that is consistent with other specifications. This is a management level position, and as such, the Glendale Management Association has been given the opportunity to review the proposed changes and did have questions that staff answered to their satisfaction. And the Glendale Management Association stated their support of the changes as presented. Our Chief Innovation Officer, as well as Russ Kwan from our staff, are here and available to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you.
Chair, can I seek Mr. Kwan's input, please? Good evening, Mr. Kwan.
Good evening.
So I'm curious as to what constitutes a closely related field in the education training component, and I think at least one of my colleagues here has the same curiosity. Can you enlighten us with that?
And who makes that determination as to what's a closely related field?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, Russ Kwan, Senior Human Resources Analyst. Closely related field, that would necessarily be determined between consultation between Human Resources as well as the department, and the department that the position falls under.
It's just that I would have thought, Mr. Kwan, if there are readily available closely related fields, you would put it there. You would enumerate it along with business administration, political science, and I don't know what, accounting or bookkeeping, whatever the degree may be that is closely related. That's why I was wondering what that means. I imagine some things will not be closely related, very obviously so, but others may be. But in terms of this being a bulletin that will be out there for people to seek to fill the position,
Yes.
it would be much better if it was clearer, if it was possible to be made clearer. It's easy for me to say sitting here. I get it.
Commissioner Gazarian, part of the issue or concern that we would have is not necessarily dissuading anybody from applying. Let's say you have a degree in accounting, where it may not necessarily be associated readily with the primary functions of the position. However, the experience that the candidate may have could be applicable. And at that point, we don't want to necessarily rule them out because of the fact that the degree may not appear to be directly related, as long as we can associate it with experience.
So I appreciate that. And so to the extent that perhaps, to have it jump out at a potential candidate who may seek to apply for the position, I note that the note section, just slightly below the education and training, actually covers what you refer to. Perhaps such a thing, if it's bolded, one may be more encouraged than discouraged if they don't have one of the two identifiable degrees, and they might think, well, this is a long shot, and not even try. Perhaps, bolding some of these very important, an equivalent combination of experience, education, and/or training may substitute for the listed minimum requirements. Well, that's encouraging for someone who may be eager to seek to fill that position. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
Sure. Just to follow that up, our job here in Civil Service Commission is to make sure that no one believes that we leave loopholes for people to do things that are not appropriate in the city. And when you put something like or closely related field, somebody says, wait a minute, who determines it? So one person determines what's a closely related field, and they let anyone they want in. That's something that we want to avoid. We don't want there to be even an appearance of that there's anything but a strict adherence to the actual education and training. And I think that Mr. Gazarian, Commissioner Gazarian is right, where underneath where you cover everything, when there's somebody who has such an experience that you basically could easily justify replacing one of somebody's education or training, I think that suffices, and I agree with Commissioner Gazarian that should be bolded, and then the line up on top should be taken out. So you stop at political science, and then you bold the note in the bottom, and I think it achieves everything that Commissioner Gazarian says, and I would feel more comfortable doing that.
I agree. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Yeah. Do we have our Chief Innovation Officer present? I thought I saw her.
yeah.
Perfect. Can't escape.
Good evening.
I will begin my questions by saying it's perhaps unfair to address these questions to you because the questions are really focused on the needs of the city manager.
Commissioner McCarley, can you come closer to the microphone?
Yeah, to whom I have tremendous respect and admiration for the work he has done, as well as the work that you have done in the area of innovation. So first question is, who serves in this position right now?
This position has been vacant for 10 years.
You're right. That was what we call a rhetorical question, understanding what the answer was going to be anyway. So the key, again, perhaps this should be addressed to the city manager, and it's a question that we've been taught never to ask, but why do we need this position now when we have not had the position for 10 years and when our distinguished, I must say, city managers come forth with some very innovative development of positions, including the one occupied previously by the fire chief, which was perhaps one of the most innovative employment decisions I have ever seen in a municipal context. So why do we need assistant to a city manager today and not yesterday?
Sure. So under the current structure, the city manager has chosen to leave the assistant city manager position vacant. So just to distinguish, and less for this board and more for the public watching, an assistant city manager serves as the chief operating officer, overseeing all the operational departments. This position, assistant to the city manager, is a high level, think of it as a high level administrative or policy analyst that serves as an assistant to the city manager. So it's not the assistant city manager overseeing all of the department operations, but it's truly that high level, that right hand to the city manager. So any issues that the city manager doesn't have time to deal with, they can delegate to this person to address. And so under the current structure, the city manager doesn't have an assistant city manager role. However, that work still has to get done. So a lot of those responsibilities filter down to the deputy city manager, other executives, and in this case, this high-level position, which is much needed at this time.
I fully appreciate it, but not that we're responsible for budgeting, and that is not within our realm of responsibility, but it is another unit, meaning a consumption unit of resources with the city and from the city. So the interesting question, as you have attempted to answer, is that this person will serve in some capacity as an execution agent for the city manager. Now, a close parallel, and I'm going to be making a motion with respect to this, and you could suggest this to Mr. Galanian. The key reference in many, many municipalities is the term chief of staff, which indeed is that individual who is the spokesperson, and I could read your job requirements here, who communicates to boards, commissions, coordinates with the different department heads, basically is that individual who makes across the city, to use a euphemism, make the trains run on time, although we don't have trains anymore, but it's an old expression that says that that particular chief of staff was responsible for the energizing and execution of the council through the city manager's decisions and proposals and actions. So, but it is interesting because we are adding something else. Now, what you did say, and since we have a public viewing this, is that based upon the present, I think it's a representation, but I will not hold you to this because Mr. Galanian is not in front of me, is that he will not fill the assistant city manager position?
That is his decision at this time. I know with the departure of Chief Lanzas, he's
Yes.
currently evaluating that. But at this time, we definitely need that high level. Chief of staff is a great example. That is a very good example that's used more in the private sector.
I appreciate your comments. I'm beginning to understand what this is all about. There are some policy issues in here and economic issues that are embedded. And I'm going to suggest, I'm going to make a motion. I'm not sure if I'm going to get a second out of
Let
this.
me just, can I ask another question before you?
Oh,
do
sure,
the motion?
please.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, sure.
So you said assistant to city manager is different than assistant city manager.
Yes.
Why wouldn't we have a different, like a heading for it, where people are not confused between the assistant city manager and assistant to city manager? Why wouldn't we just pick a different name altogether so people aren't confused? I don't understand. I mean, I read Computer for Dummies, and with me reading Computer for Dummies, I usually like things to be dummied down so people would I would understand it. So assistant to city manager to me and assistant city manager is exactly the same thing as far as I'm concerned. If it acts like a duck, it quacks like a duck, it's a duck, except this one isn't a duck because it has different duties. So why wouldn't we call it something else? It doesn't make any sense to have an assistant city manager and an assistant to city manager, Because it's very confusing to the public and very confusing to everyone. Why would would not have a different name for it? Have you guys thought about that? Or you didn't think about it? You just kind of said it will just kind of work?
It's one of those things because I've been here a long time. I'm so used to that. And some cities use, city manager, assistant city manager, and deputy city manager and don't have an assistant too. Some cities skip the deputy and have an assistant too. We can certainly look at that at a future time. It is good input that, to the general public, the word "to" isn't. It doesn't mean what it means to us here in terms of the very different roles that these two positions play. So we will take that feedback, and I will take that back to City Manager Galani, and maybe at a future time, perhaps with the next budget year, we can look at coming up with a different title.
Yes, Commissioner Kazarian.
Thank you. Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening.
In presenting this item, I believe I heard our chief examiner say the following, that the assistant to the city manager will serve, this position will serve as an assistant to the city manager, assistant to the assistant city manager, and assistant to the deputy city manager. I believe I heard it correctly. I may have not heard it exactly in those words, but I'm darn sure that I took that to mean here's an individual who's going to really be essentially just like my assistant to the 3 lawyers that I have in my office. She's my assistant, but she's also the other senior associate's assistant, the junior associate's assistant, but she's my assistant. And now here's the key. When we talk about an assistant to someone, that is greatly lesser qualified than the person they are assisting, generally. They're not equal qualifiers. Otherwise, you would have 2 city managers or 2 assistant city managers. One cannot be the assistant to the other unless they are functioning in a supporting role. Now I hear from you that we have a vacant position for assistant city manager position, which may not get filled. So then I am a little more comfortable that this 10-year absence of the assistant to city manager position that my colleague, Commissioner McCarley, was questioning about, okay, it makes sense to now bring this position back because we're losing another, what I would view to be a pretty important position, an assistant city manager, not an assistant to city manager.
It only came online a year ago.
Okay.
And this is something the assistant city manager, which Chief Lorenzo had, only came online a year ago.
It was not there
No,
before.
we voted for it a
Right,
year
I
ago.
remember
So
that.
9 years before that, we just didn't have any position in that area.
So is there a deputy city manager?
Yes, there's
There is.
currently one deputy city manager, yes.
Okay. And am I correct, and perhaps my chief examiner can correct me if I was misunderstanding the earlier presentation, does or does not the assistant to the city manager position constitute an assistant who will assist the city manager as well as the deputy city manager?
Yes, that is correct.
That is correct.
So this position is intended to serve all 3 high-level executive management positions in the city manager's office. So depending on the deadlines, depending on what's on the plate for the city manager, this assistant can be utilized by any of those 3 positions. And the reason even the assistant city manager is listed in the org chart is because, again, even though that's a position that's vacant, if at a future time that position were to be filled, we wanted to make it clear that the assistant 2 would be assisting that. So too many assists
Right,
there.
yes, but so that is exactly what I imagined it to be. It is exactly as my legal assistant in my law firm. She is my assistant, but she's also the other lawyer's assistant.
I guess the distinction is that this is not an administrative assistant. This is not someone that you would give administrative tasks to alone. This is truly someone who can, the legislators meeting, they have to vote by tomorrow. Legislation comes out, this analyst is expected to analyze that legislation, determine how it affects the city, turn around a quick written response, and brief the city manager. So this is a high-level analyst. This is not an administrative
Not somebody who's
analyst
going to type your letters for you.
Correct.
But so can the deputy city manager ostensibly fill the same tasks that this person would be filling, And I imagine so did the assistant city manager when there was one. So essentially, it's not really an assistant to anybody, it's just a position, whether it's a chief of staff or some really more representative title or a reference would probably, if I saw this job description, I am not going to bother to read 5 pages. I don't want to be somebody's assistant because that's going to connote me as bringing their coffee, perhaps. Forget it. But as it turns out, no, it's a high-level position. So,
That doesn't happen. You know, it won't bring anyone a coffee.
actually, they do these days. Still, they do. Yeah, they offer it, in fact, without asking. But anyway, we're digressing. Anyway, those are my thoughts. I don't know what my colleagues think about the title. The title is the title. I don't get to tell you what to choose. For the title.
We have a comment from
budget
Commissioner
So,
Astorian.
has there any thought been given to title becomes so misconstrued, at least potentially misconstrued in the public realm? Why not call it an advisor or an analyst advisor to the city manager? So now you don't have manager, assistant in there, right? Again, semantics, but if the idea is to make sure that the public understands that these two positions, whether it's a deputy city manager or a assistant city manager or assistant two, there are differences, then by all means, use a different title and call it the day.
Sure, I will take that feedback back. Again, we haven't utilized this position for over 10 years, and so that hasn't been top of mind, but I am hearing you, and I will take that feedback back to the city manager. If I may address one comment with the prior question to Mr. Kwan, I did want to say some institutions do utilize the bachelor's degree of public policy, so that's a good example of a closely related field. So not everyone uses public administration or political science, so that's just one example to show you why that language was in there. But happy to list the current ones as you suggested.
And also, I guess if this position is serving the deputy city manager and the assistant city manager, if there's going to be any title change, perhaps if it's going to be called an analyst or chief of staff, could say to the city manager's office as opposed to the city manager, if it's serving multiple people, not just one
I think just a
position.
budgetary reason that we can't change the
Not
title,
now,
correct?
but just down the road, if
I mean, we
if
can't
you're going to
change the
think
title
of...
because of budgetary reasons.
Yeah, no, I realize that. Just down the road, if you're going to give it any consideration
Yes.
to these suggestions.
I will add that to the list of.
Commissioner
I'm sorry,
McCarthy?
I
Yeah.
need some clarification. The Commissioner of Current, what do you mean by because of budgetary reasons you can't change the title?
I can respond to that. These positions are designated and budgeted through the city council process, and they are done in June when the budget is adopted. And so if we are going to change any title classifications, we should probably collect them. There were some comments along those lines at the last meeting as well. We should probably collect all of those and come back with a recommendation to the city council prior to next year's budget adoption.
Thank you. So it could be changed, except it has to go through
Yes.
the process.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Chair?
Commissioner McCarthy.
And I appreciate the explanation. And again, what you have provided is of great benefit to us as a learning experience. But I am moving to table this matter until next month, because I think amongst the 5 of us, we have very significant questions related to the organizational structure, the reason for this particular position, what the functions happen to be. And my belief is that the appropriate person to respond to these questions, in fact, to give us the big picture as to the necessity for moving forward with the assistant to the city manager, is indeed our city manager. So that is my motion to table for 1 month with the expectation that Mr. Galanian would in fact come forward and answer some relatively benign questions, but questions that I believe have to be answered because, one, no one has filled this position for the last 10 years, and secondly, this whole issue about the decision, at least the interim decision, not to move forward with the appointment of an assistant city manager. Now, whether that's a cost savings decision or it's an organizational decision, I don't know, but Mr. Galanian would know.
So Commissioner McCarley, Mr. Galanian is at the League of California Cities Conference. He did ask me to attend on his behalf. I believe I've answered your questions. If you have additional questions, I'm happy to try to answer them. If at that time I'm not successful, then I would recommend you table it, but give me an opportunity to answer any outstanding questions you may
You've
have.
done spectacularly. Please do not take this as a criticism. This is at the various highest levels of this particular city. So we're addressing positions that have great importance, as does yours. And so with that, we need that one individual who leads our city on behalf of its city council, and that individual to tell us, for instance, the roles, responsibilities of this position, and you've done a very credible job, but as well, his decision with respect to filling it at this time versus no one occupying that position for a long period of time, and his decision, which I again emphasize, there is a TV camera monitoring every word or capturing every word that I state, not going forward, positioning somebody as the assistant city manager and the consequential impact on the budget, because there's a lot of money involved in these positions. Perhaps the most money, almost some of the most highly compensated individuals in our city. So that's why I'm going to move to table it if I can get a second.
Well, my question is, one, if there is a second, and if not, if there is another motion, perhaps to approve with the language striking the closely related field, if that's an option.
Well, let me just, can I ask one, before your motion, Mr. McCauley? Am I understanding that the assistant to city manager will have the same compensation, will take over the assistant city manager's job?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
That's what I understood. That's not what it's happening.
That's not it.
Yeah, what I hope to convey to you is that because that high-level position of chief operating officer is vacant at the moment,
Right.
again, the work still needs to get done, so that work is filtering down to other positions, this being one of them, right?
Right.
So,
Did you use chief operating officer?
I did. That's essentially what the assistant city
But that's
manager
another
does.
name for assistant city manager, chief
correct,
operating officer.
Correct. Which was a position Mr. Galanian had before he became our city manager, correct?
Commissioner Perrion, just for reference, you may recall, because we were talking about that you've been here a long time. About 10 years ago, when the city manager was Jim Starbird, the assistant city manager was Bob McFall, the deputy city manager was Yasmin Beers, the assistant to the city manager was Elaine Aguilar. Does that give you a context of who that person was?
I just wanted to clarify, because there was a statement made about salaries and all that. I just want to make sure that there's an understanding that the assistant to city manager does not automatically get a replacement of salary of the assistant city manager, correct?
Absolutely, yes, you are correct in that.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that.
I also want to thank you for answering all these questions, and if there are more,
No,
that we won't.
if I may be briefly heard, I immensely respect my colleague, Commissioner McCarley, but I do not share the degree of concern that requires me to second or vote for the motion to have the city manager come here and ask questions. As Commissioner McCarley has indicated, you've done very well in explaining what is, and it appears to me that what is, due to budgetary constraints, this is the title of the position. I personally, Chair and members of the commission, I am satisfied that the position ought to go out to be filled due to already an absent slot of a assistant city manager, and I do recall, as Ms. Varbetian referred to, Mr. McFall was an assistant city manager, and he did a lot back in the day, I remember. So that position having already been vacant, to now have yet another position that appears to be sought, an approval sought from us, I'm satisfied to go forward. I would make a motion at the appropriate time, if the chair so sees fit, that we approve this with two modifications: to remove the closely related field from the education and training, and to bold the segment that is headlined with note, just immediately, slightly immediately below the education and training portion. That would be my position, with the utmost respect.
Second?
Well, just for clarity, Commissioner McCarley, my esteemed colleague, Commissioner McCarley's motion for lack of support is died on the dais, so now you can make another motion. It's my understanding, correct? Just wanted to clear that.
That's correct.
I
That
believe the
motion did
record
not
speaks
receive
for
a
itself.
second.
Okay.
The record speaks for itself. I've made myself clear. And yes, clearly, if there was a second to Commissioner McCarley, I would be prepared to vote on that up or down or abstain. I will make that decision instantaneously.
There was no second to Commissioner McCarley's motion. And now we have a new motion second.
And
by
it's already been seconded.
Correct. Can we have a roll call?
Commissioner Kazarian?
Yes.
Commissioner Abkarian?
Yes.
Commissioner Astorian?
Yes.
Commissioner McCarley?
No.
Chair Haratunian?
Yes. Thank you. Next item.
Public hearing, classifications and positions.
Ms. Adams.
Mr. Chair and members of the commission, periodically, the Civil Service Commission declares by resolution certain classifications to serve a 12-month probationary period. Those to be designated as hourly and entrance level classifications. It's coming up on 2 years since the resolutions were last updated. Now, while there are no recommended changes for hourly or entrance level classifications, there are recommended updates and revisions to those classifications subject to a 12-month probationary period. That's the matter before the commission. There are 3 resolutions for your consideration with updates to one of those. I don't believe we have any members of the public that wish to be heard on this item, but we do have Russ Kwan from our staff who is here to answer any questions the commission may have.
Mr. Chair, I have a question of Mr. Kwan.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Mr. Kwan thought he was going to just sit back and have a relaxed time and have some chocolate.
Far from that.
Sorry, Mr. Kwan.
Reading, as I understand what I'm seeing, so the position of a reserve police officer is unclassified and exempt from classified service?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, Commissioner Kazarian, that is correct. It is a part-time position that is unclassified.
Because it's part-time? Is that the main reason why it is that way?
Primarily, yes.
I see. So a reserve police officer would not have civil service protection?
That is correct.
Interesting. All right, thank you.
All right.
And just to clarify, a reserve police officer, before becoming a police officer, still could get a background check, go through the process, and do everything else that a police officer needs to do.
That is correct. They are subject to the same requirements in terms of hiring that a full-time police officer is required to go through.
Okay.
Commissioner McCarley.
Yeah. All right. This is a major, to me, this is significant. So there has been a determination, and pursuant to the rules, we have authority to move forward and determine a certain number of positions are unclassified, which means discharged at will, no consequences, and benefit package is different, perhaps to some degree, from the benefit package ultimately awarded to those individuals, albeit entry-level positions, but not here. So it's a different. Now, the key question has to be, what is the common discriminator, or what is the common denominator for these positions? And let me, before, as you consider that question, if it has any value whatsoever, the last time I asked this of you or one of your peers, the response was, well, the particular position is unclassified because it is funded independently from the city budget. For instance, the resources are from the state or the resources are from the federal government. But when I go down this list, unless I am, and it's potentially possible that I'm completely mistaken as to every single position, but it does not appear that each one of these positions is independently funded from sources other than, for instance, block grants, or other than, for instance, state money that's specifically identifiable for a function. Now, there are one or two that fall into this category. The rest of them, my view is, and you tell me if I'm right or wrong, but let me put the question. What is the discriminator? What allows us to say that some positions are unclassified, meaning no civil service position protections whatsoever, and some positions are?
Okay, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, Commissioner McCarley. So as it stands with regards to this particular resolution, all the positions that you do see on that are listed here, from administrative intern going down to youth worker, are all part-time positions. So these are all positions that individuals are hired on an hourly basis, and they are not given any benefits.
Did I hear you correctly? They're all part-time positions for accountant one or groundskeeper one?
No, there's a total of 3 resolutions that you're looking at. So on page 41, where we're referencing the unclassified hourly part-time classifications and positions, these are all part-time positions. Now, what I believe you're referring to with regards to the unclassified positions that we occasionally bring up to the commission for approval, those are full-time positions that would hold a full-time classification, like administrative associate or administrative analyst, where they are funded by, let's say, a one-time grant funding, where in the event that the department is not able to maintain that funding, maintain that grant funding, we wouldn't necessarily need to necessarily move to possibly lay off the individual if we're not able to identify continued funding.
So we would be able, if additional information were provided, let's say on page 43, which I think is what you are alluding to, that each one of these has a...
Commissioner McCarley, page 43, those are the entrance level classifications. So basically, those are the classifications that are identified by rule in terms of having, being entry level into the city, where they could be subject to additional benefits. So such as police officer recruit, where you can receive military veterans points.
Okay, so they, for clarification purposes, 43, are these all the entry positions throughout the city hierarchy, all the job classifications? These are every single one of the entry-level positions?
That is 43 and 44.
Yes, 43 and 44.
So when I enter civil service here in the city of Glendale, I'm going to come through, at least at the commencement of a career, come through each one of these positions.
You could, yes. So, I mean, there are some opportunities where you can come in
as a lateral hire or something like that.
Or like administrative analyst, that's one that does require some level of experience prior to coming in, where you don't necessarily have to come in as an administrative at a lower level position. But for police officer, honestly, police officer recruit, that is the entrance level classification. You could be hired on as a police officer lateral, and at that point you'll come on as a police officer, and you could still come into the city, you could still be employed as a city employee, as a police officer, without having held that police officer recruit classification with Glendale.
My assumption is that every single one of these are probationary for a certain period of time, whether 6 months or 1 year? As to the ones on 43?
Would be correct, yes.
Okay, so the discriminator here, as I use that particular term, is, yes, they're entry-level position. You've identified every single entry-level position within the job hierarchy in the city of Glendale. And
yes.
The only difference is that there might be some additional benefits that would accrue to these particular positions. I'm still struggling. These are civil service positions subject to termination at will because of probation. Nothing different, nothing unusual about that across the civil service system nationwide.
That is correct, yes.
What's the...
I think there's 3 different resolutions that we're going to pass today.
Yes.
That's
The
what I'm going
first
through.
resolution is the unclassified hourly part-time classification and positions, which is pages 41 and 42, correct?
Yes, that's
The
correct.
second resolution is resolution for entrance level classification, which is pages 43 and 44, correct?
Classified, I mean, is that
Those are
civil,
classified,
is
yeah.
that civil service
Yes,
protection?
yes. So they're different, completely different. One is unclassified, 41, 42. The second one are classified, they're entry-level classified employees, pages 43 and 44. And the third one is resolution for a 12-month probationary period for classified employee, and those are pages 45, 46, 7, 8, 9, 50 to 51.
54,
So three,
all the way to 54.
all the way up to 54, which I don't have because my printer didn't print it. So yes, so all the way up to 54. So there are three different resolutions. Each one has to be voted separately, and they're not. Only the first one is unclassified employees.
That is correct.
The second and the third are not unclassified. They're just classifications and probationary period extensions.
Yes. So entrance level classifications as well as the 12-month
Correct.
probationary periods.
So can we ask questions about any of those now, or are we going to go one at a time? Because
I was jumping all over
Oh, you were?
because
Okay.
I just wanted to
So
focus on the
So
list.
then, try, I don't feel bad then, because I want to ask, I'm kind of shocked, because I'm looking, police lieutenant, police officer, police chief's adjutant, assistant, these are all on page 50. All these are classified positions, but probationary for a period of 12 months, meaning what? Meaning if they don't do well, then they lose their rank of lieutenant?
That would be, that is a possibility, yes.
I
Because
see.
there are other classifications, well, the bulk of the positions that we do have within the city have a 6-month probationary period. So with regards to these are positions that have
12
been
months.
designated to have the 12-month probationary period.
And the city management group, let's say police chief or police captain, they've seen this and they have no objection to it, correct?
I understand there were some questions back and forth about this. Or was
Or
it?
the Police
No,
Officers
about-
Association, have they been consulted with these?
This is a regular resolution that we do get, we have gotten approval for.
Approval from who, you mean the associations, or?
No, from we bring it back to you regularly, meaning the commission.
From us?
Were they notified? Would the
It's an
police
item that-
association notified, would the management association notified that we're going to vote on a 12-month probationary period, and maybe they come and say, no, we'd rather have, I don't know, police chief be 6 months. I'm just giving you an example. Were they notified or were they not notified?
We didn't notify them directly with regards to the resolution coming before the commission. However, this information has been taken from our, the MOUs that we signed with each of the associations.
And the MOUs included all of the exact rankings that are here in front of us today.
That is correct.
And that MOU was signed with all the management association and all the other associations.
That is
That is
correct.
correct? Okay.
Right, I'm going to continue my questioning. So as to 41,
Yes.
these are the unclassified hourly, and then you put in parentheses, part-time classifications and positions.
Yes.
Now, there are part-time positions within this city that are covered by civil service? Or is it a sine qua non, is it a part-time position is of necessity or by previous decision or regulation or ordinance, an unclassified position? If I get a part-time position here, it's unclassified.
Yes.
Deductively.
Yes.
All part-time positions are unclassified.
Yes, as far as I know, yes.
That is correct. Part-time positions are unclassified.
And I want to follow up with something, it's just my recollection, maybe failed or otherwise. Looking at 41 again, once again, I recall a conversation in which we addressed the funding source, which was equally a determinant in whether or not the positions fell as classified or unclassified.
That is correct. That is another avenue, or that is another option that we would generally bring to you as the Civil Service Commission, to have a particular position deemed unclassified in the event that it is grant funded and we don't necessarily have an indefinite funding source identified.
Those individuals, assuming that funding was through a third party, not the city, or not through city general fund, are those positions, some of those positions are indeed full-time, are they not?
That is
Did you
correct.
something of that nature? Are those positions listed here?
Not on this document, because this is identifying only the unclassified hourly part-time
Okay,
classifications.
So there's another, we should be voting on another one that deems those positions that are funded through third-party sources as unclassified, so that we have the totality of coverage and there's completeness in this presentation.
We do those as we go, like one at a time?
This was the report that I had requested for it to come in front of the Civil Service Commission that says any full-time employees in the city of Glendale that are unclassified, I wanted to see their title, how many years they've been in that position, and in the past 12 months, how many hours they worked in that position. That's a report that I asked for now. I think 3 months ago I asked for it, but I understood that there was a change in leadership, so I didn't really push for it. But that's one that I've asked for, which says unclassified full-time employee, how many years they've been in that position, and then the past 12 months, how many hours they worked.
We didn't get it for you.
We haven't gotten it.
That's the criticism. The one report that we wanted, and that's where I was driving, for instance, those that gets, CBOG or what other funding, those aren't identified. So there's another sheet that would be responsive, which was the expectation, that would be responsive to Mr.
It's a different
Karian's.
report altogether.
That's a different report. We have the resolutions now, and then we have the report, which we will discuss as the next item, and perhaps maybe ask for additional report
And then
on.
during that time, if we want, we can have them bring that back, because
Right.
some of those positions should be classified as classified and not unclassified.
That's where we're going, because it's an examination based upon what Mr. Karian has identified very forcefully over time, that there were decisions made that might not have any basis in reason.
And just to clarify it, number of years ago, we brought back some of those positions, and about 25 of those positions, people were in them for over 15 years, and they were unclassified. And the reason that I bring this up and why I want that report is I don't want anyone to be stuck in a position for over 15 years being unclassified, which is just shouldn't ever happen. So that's a different issue than what we have in front of us, but I still want that report to come in, and I'm going to ask for it to be coming next meeting.
I'm going to make a motion once again, and I'm not sure if I can get a second from Mr. Abkarian, but I would have wanted the totality of the report, and once again, put this over until we see that fourth sheet, which is...
But the resolutions are different than the report.
That's a report.
The
that I
report-
want.
I know,
And
but
this
it's...
one is a resolution.
Resolutions
It
are
has
different.
nothing,
Yeah.
no effect on the report and what we're gonna do with those unclassified full-time employees. This would not have any hindrance or any problems with the report and what we would request on the full-time unclassified employees in the future.
We haven't even addressed your report.
Pressure asserted. All right.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna wait for, that's a separate issue, separate report, separate set of circumstances. I do wanna see that report next time, because I've asked for it so many times. Now I'm gonna say I want it next time. And then, but this, I'm comfortable passing this, because that particular item has nothing to do with this resolution in front of us today.
But passing this means what? That these positions are either unclassified, the ones stated in page 41 and 42.
Correct.
Or they are classified with limited periods of probationary period that
There-
is specified.
There are three resolutions,
Right,
so.
yeah, the other two,
Correct.
the second one, if you will, from page 43
Correct.
is,
Entrance level classified employees.
right, and these are the entrance level classified employees,
Correct.
pages 43 and 44.
And the third one says, any item between pages 45
to
and
54.
54 are going to have 12-month probationary periods, correct?
And do we have a say-so whether or not they ought to have 12 months or they ought to have less than 12 months?
That we do.
Well, then I'm
go
not
through it.
comfortable, I'm not comfortable passing on this, and I would second Commissioner McCarley's request to table it, because there's a lot of positions here that they would be on a probationary period for a period of 12 months, and then 12 months later is when they may
they
become,
might decide
they
they're not
matriculate
there
in that
anymore.
position, or they're not there anymore.
Okay, are you comfortable passing resolution 1 and 2 and then table 3?
Yes, I would be, but not 3. Yeah.
Okay, so that's what, Mr. Chair?
I'll modify just to table number 3, resolution number 3. Consistent with
second
Ms.
that.
Kazarian's suggestion.
I
Second.
agree that we should table number 3 when everyone feels comfortable, and maybe given the association also another crack at it to come next time.
Yes, I definitely second that. We want to make sure they have specific notice for these items that are coming back, and we want to have their
And
presence.
Mr. Chair, I note that in all items, there's always an entry, a specification that says, the Management Association has been notified, the GPOA has been notified. I dare imagine that perhaps even on those that notification was made, probably there's a prior collective MOUs and understandings or bargaining agreements that doesn't really require that notice to be made, but the notice is made nevertheless. I was a bit taken aback that no notice is stated to have been given as to these items being brought before us today, and that is one of the main reasons why I don't feel comfortable going forward on the third resolution. Thank you.
Okay, so we're gonna,
Let me put forward the following motion and see if we can get a second. That we table resolution number 3 for next time, and that the appropriate associations are given notice, but that we move forward resolution 1 and 2 and pass resolution 1 and 2.
Second. I think it's essentially the same thing you
Yes.
just
I just put it in the
articulated.
motion.
Yeah, that's correct.
Just put in the motion what you said.
That's fine, second.
roll call?
Yes, I think one of us would have given
Yeah,
a second.
second.
Commissioner Gazarian?
Yes.
Commissioner Abkarian?
Yes.
Commissioner Storian?
Yes.
Commissioner McCarley?
Yes.
Chair Hartunian.
Yes. Next item, please. Now we get to the,
Now, Commissioner Abkarian, am I clear that they are going to have the feedback of the employee association groups along with the resolution that is going to come back to us?
At least
What I think the
going to
motion
get
says that-
a
that-
notice.
And notice is given to the association, and then I'm sure if they have issues, they will give feedback. They've never been shy in giving feedback, so that was the motion. Yes, with an understanding of what you just said.
okay. Next item, please.
Adoption of resolution, report on unclassified status proposal for administrative associates, administrative analyst, caseworker 1, office services specialist 1, and youth services coordinator.
Can we table this because we haven't? Mr. Chair, may I make a suggestion for consideration? May we table the remaining items because we have another matter that's going to keep us here late into the night?
I
And
second.
I see now it's 6:36 PM.
I second that we move these to next meeting and the reports go to the next meeting.
Is there
Just
any?
just to double check, because you've also had department director here for the duration of the meeting, is there any urgency for this matter to move forward at this meeting versus next month? Okay, do
Which
you-
one? Which one?
Actually, all of the classifications, right now we have hourly employees, a number of hourly employees working 40 hours a week. They've been working 40 hours a week the last year and a half. We do like to reallocate these hourly employees into unclassified positions. There are grant-funded positions through the state.
You would like to have them unclassified, you said?
Classified?
We will, they're hourly employees.
Correct.
We would like to hire them as salaried, unclassified.
Unclassified salary
So they
employees.
get the benefits, medical, all the benefits and the
And
perks
this
that we
is
have.
for a short period of time of no more than 12 months.
No, this is gonna be more than that. We're looking at probably, about 2-3 years.
So you have the grant funding for that
We have the
period
grant
of time?
funding. We have grant funding through Homeless Services, through the state, through the federal government, as well as workforce development funds and
I don't feel
state funds.
comfortable having an unclassified employee working for 3 years without having any protection in the city.
We're under pressure. We have too many things in front of us. I think if they waited this long, they can wait another month.
Yeah, I would like to ask some questions about this. I apologize.
No problem.
For having you wait in here, but I think we don't want to rush into this and do the wrong thing and then
Regret it later.
regret it
Understood.
later.
Yep.
We'll see you next month.
Thanks, sir.
Hey, it's good. It's entertaining. Come on back.
Is that the last item? No.
Well, I mean, we're going to postpone everything else. to the
Everything
next
else?
meeting,
Items 11,
Including the Civil Service Commission staff comments.
11, 12, and 13, I move to table those to the next meeting.
Second.
Roll call?
Commissioner Gazarian?
Yes.
Commissioner Abkarian?
Yes.
Commissioner Astorian?
Yes.
Commissioner McCarley?
Yes.
And Chair Hartunian.
Yes. Thank you, everyone.
We will be, we
We're
will be
adjourned?
going into a closed session and we might report out.
Can we read the next item into the record, please?
Next item.
Next item into the record would be item number 14, Ms. Navarro.
Closed session.
Public employee hearing.